Hi, 6th period. Welcome to the first presentation, Slavery and Abolitionism. This presentation is by Ava Johnson and Abby Coe. During this presentation, we will take a look at an important map and discuss two posters and two primary source documents. To begin, here's a map of the U.S. from the years 1789 to 1861. Take some time to notice the effect of abolitionism on the U.S. over time by noticing the ratio of free states and territories to the ratio of slave states and territories as the years go by. Now let's take a look at the posters. Slavery and Abolitionism, a Major Problem and the Working Solution, by Ava Johnson and Abby Coe.
Slavery in the 1800s was pretty messed up. Slaves were considered property, but they were still responsible for their actions. They weren't allowed to do many things like reading and writing and had other religions imposed on them. Even when they could marry, their families were usually divided soon after. In fact, while most people think that slaves sang because they were hopeful or even happy, this was definitely wrong. Slaves sang when they were the most sad, using songs as a way to relieve their sadness. Moving on to places, we wanted to focus on the plantations. Slaves built a bright social and cultural life by creating important communities with other slaves in the plantation. There was also a hierarchy among the slaves, from the field slaves to skilled artisans. Slaves working in the fields generally worked with cotton, hemp, tobacco, corn, and livestock. One more thing to add is that the South obviously supported slavery more than the North, and we will elaborate more on that next. Slavery was very important in the South because the South was an area more focused on agriculture. They were proud of slavery and claimed that it was what made them different. Even Southerners who felt uneasy about slavery could not imagine what would happen without slaves. However, the North disagreed completely, and because of that, it divided the nation.
Moving on to abolitionism. To begin, you might be wondering who abolitionists are. Well, they were activists who fought to end slavery. Here are some important abolitionists. As you can guess, abolitionists came in many forms, such as writers and publishers. Two important writers and publishers were Frederick Douglass and William C. Nell. Frederick Douglass was an escaped slave from the South who became a writer of an abolitionist newspaper called the North Star. William C. Nell was a writer and publisher. He wrote a book called The Colored Patriots of the American Revolution in 1855. He was also a writer in the newspaper The Liberator. He additionally became the publisher of the North Star and was one of the first black federal appointees of the U.S. Other important abolitionists were James Forten and David Walker. James Forten wrote anti-slavery pamphlets, while David Walker published The Appeal to the Colored Citizens of the World in 1829, which was a book that called to overthrow slavery. Some abolitionists were speakers and lecturers, such as Charles L. Redmond, who was the first African-American lecturer in the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society. He also fought against sexism. Maria Stewart was a public speaker who protested against racism, slavery, and sexism. Abolitionists also worked along the Underground Railroad. David Ruggles was one of them. He additionally traveled, learned, and taught about abolitionism. Robert Purvis also helped many runaway slaves. Lastly, some were founders. William Whipper, an abolitionist, contributed to the founding of the Anti-Slavery American Moral Reform Society. Sarah M. Douglas opened one of the first academic schools for black children. Moving on to places. Here are some places where abolitionists traveled, gave their speeches, and spread awareness. William Whipper's Anti-Slavery Moral Reform Society was located in New York. Sarah M. Douglas's school was located in Philadelphia. Charles L. Redmond traveled all over the U.S. and London giving his lectures. Abolitionism took place all over the U.S. Abolitionism was a very important movement in the U.S. It brought awareness to a major issue and started the end of slavery. Next, let's take a look at one primary source document and one primary source photo.
This is the introduction paragraph from the 4th volume of Frederick Douglass's newspaper. Frederick Douglass describes the reality of the U.S. at the time. He talks about two classes, one with a handful of people that want to abolish slavery, and the other with the majority of voters that either support slavery or they don't want to abolish it completely.
Next, we have this primary source image of an enslaved family working in the cotton fields. Cotton was a very labor-intensive crop. It was one of the main crops harvested by slaves in the South. Thank you for watching our video. We hope it was helpful. Please post any questions you may have on Edmodo. We'll be happy to answer them.